So it's been quite a while since I've recorded a video. A lot has happened. I mean, other than the plague, a lot has happened for me professionally. I won't go into too much detail, but I ended up kind of merging my private practice, my business, really just my private practice. I still own my business, but with a new clinic where we are combining medication and psychological testing and counseling, and I'm the new clinical director over there, and there's a lot of exciting things in the works that we have there. At least there was until the plague hit, but so I apologize for my handful of subscribers. I'm growing, so thanks for subscribing, but apologize that it's been so long since I've made a video because I really want to provide some of this relevant content. So today I'm going to talk about Child Protective Services, or CPS. And before I really get into this topic about how CPS will actually make situations worse, I want to front load this really heavily and say that, number one, that these folks that work for CPS, these caseworkers, that here locally, it's CPS is a appendage to DCFS, which is the Department of Child Family Services. Now, every state has a version of DCFS. It may be DHS or DFS or something. But I've seen many situations and cases where CPS actually makes things worse. I don't like calling CPS. It's not a part of my job that I enjoy. I especially don't like CPS because I always know that there is at least a reasonably good chance that they will make things worse. But before I get into that, I want to emphasize that I know that these folks are doing the best job that they can, the caseworkers. I know that they work hard. They tend to be overworked. They tend to be underpaid. They tend to be overwhelmed with cases. They are a government-ran agency, and which just basically means that there's a lot of runaround. There's a lot of red tape. Things are poorly managed. Quite honestly, they're not supported very well. Sometimes they're not trained very well. And I know that they're doing the best that they can with what they have. And I can't help but to think that a lot of these caseworkers, they go into it maybe not necessarily even knowing what they're getting into, because it's a job that is frankly overwhelming. There's a lot to it. But let me talk about why sometimes CPS makes things worse. Now, I've actually seen many cases, and there was one particular situation where I got reports that this 10-year-old kid had his nose broken by his dad. Dad beat him with a belt. Kid is tiny, severely underweight. Looks like he's 7, 8 years old. I hadn't actually seen the kid myself, but the reports that I got was this kid was urinating and defecating in his bedroom. That's a clear warning sign, by the way. That's a red flag that you should not ignore. Usually that means it could be most likely if a kid is defecating and urinating in their bedroom, they're afraid to leave the room, probably because bad things have happened before. Going to the bathroom results in harsh punishments, capital punishments. Anyway, so I called CPS and called it in, clear signs of abuse on this 10-year-old kid. And I think a week or two later, they called me and told me that they had closed it. They had closed the investigation because the dad never answered his phone. And that was their reason. So my conclusion at the time was, and they left me a voicemail. Like I didn't talk to them personally about the reasons why they closed it. They just left me a voicemail and said, hey, we spent the last couple of weeks trying to call the dad when he was the reported abuser. We spent the last couple of weeks trying to call him, and he never answered, so we closed it. And I just thought, oh, so that's apparently the what it takes to avoid being criminally charged with child abuse, is just don't answer your phone when CPS calls. That's not their standard. That's not their protocol. But sometimes the caseworkers may make a judgment call such as that, and I just frankly disagree. I think that is poor training, the result of poor training, maybe overwhelmed. But I've seen situations where, and I'll go into more detail later, but I've seen situations where you have a kid who is in an abusive home, is under a child abuser. And CPS is called. Maybe the school calls them. Maybe someone like me calls them, and they open an investigation. And for whatever reasons that often I struggle to make heads or tails of, they close it. Now, the day that CPS closes their investigation is usually the worst day of an abused child's life, because that's when the abusive parent really gets them. They double, triple, quadruple down on the psychological abuse, the confinements, the restrictions, the punishments, and just may beat the ever-living crap out of them that day. And so I am required by law to call CPS when there's reported child abuse. I'm required by law. I'm a mandatory reporter. And it's a struggle for me because I know that if the case isn't a very good one, and I've even seen situations where the case was a really strong one and they still closed it, and that ends up being like one of the worst days of that kid's life ever. That's when, that's when child abusers, they double, quadruple, triple down, whatever, and really make life hell for that child. Now, I have personally, years ago, I was involved in a case, in a situation. I won't go into detail, but I won't go into too much detail. But there was a situation where abuse was clearly happening, and there was a long string of reports against a certain individual. And when I was hired to basically look through it all and make some determinations, the individual that was reported started to bully me, intimidate me, attempt to manipulate me, started tracking me, found out where I worked. For all I know, this person found out where I lived. Potentially, I'm not ruling it out. I ended up calling my brother-in-law, who's an FBI agent, and asked him for help because this person was scary. This person is terrifying. And the truth of the matter is that some of these people who are categorically child abusers are really terrifyingly scary, bad people. They're willing to do things and go to great lengths that regular people are not willing to go to evade the law. And if that means coming after us, and I basically concluded that if this person is doing this stuff to me, undoubtedly this person was also doing this to the Child Protective Services caseworkers, the low-level caseworkers that are underpaid and overworked, going to their homes even, finding out what their names are, the names of their kids. They are scary people. And the CPS caseworkers don't necessarily have the proper protections in place, because day after day they might be face to face with sociopathic people, maybe people who are narcissistic tendencies, people who are criminally minded, willing to go to great lengths to avoid being criminally charged. And so there's just not a good infrastructure in place. CPS tends to be way underfunded. They tend to have very low pay. Their resources are always limited. Their protection is poor. They just don't provide protection for these people when they should. And so all of that being said, I think it just deserves a lot more attention in our culture and our society. Sometimes I'm troubled when I look at a lot of the social issues that get a lot of attention, when statistically 5 kids die in the United States every single day at the result of child abuse or neglect. We don't hear about that. Most people are shocked to learn that statistic. I know I was, and I only learned about it about 2 years ago, something like that. I think I learned about it. It was either 17 or 18, and that was the statistic that was pulled from 2016. I doubt it's changed. If it has, not very much. But almost 5 kids average every day die at the result of child abuse. Why aren't we putting our energy and our attention into this type of thing? Why do we not go to greater lengths to protect our children? It really troubles me. But that's just sort of the rundown on why it's a precarious and difficult situation a therapist like me to call Child Protective Services when I've given like just long, comprehensive and solid evidence reports of, I mean, this is my job, I'm good at it, of why this kid needs to be helped, and they do nothing. It's very, very difficult situation. So anyways, thank you for watching, and if you're new here, again, help me out, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Hope everybody is staying healthy and safe out there, and we'll see you next time.